All right, everyone, welcome. Apologies, we're starting a minute or two behind. I'm Chris Haggerty, and this is our October 7th work session for the Wake County Board of Education. I want to welcome everybody to our meeting today. Today on our agenda, we'll start with Infinite Campus implementation update. We'll continue our discussion of AI readiness. And then we have some updates for you about the District 8 vacancy and need to give you some details about the NCSBA, that's North Carolina School Boards Association, annual conference. All right, so we will start with our Infinite Campus update.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today. We do this and provide these updates on Infinite Campus. Our post go live, and today we're going to talk about project history and background, implementation journey and key milestones, hit some highlights and accomplishments, go over some of our help desk insights and data analysis, go over the campus parent portal usage and trends, hit some key lessons learned, talk about some next steps, and we'll certainly provide an opportunity for questions. A little bit deeper with the desired outcomes here, we'd like to provide an update on the successful Infinite Campus implementation, highlight the milestones and the accomplishments, share the insights of the help desk tickets, and again, to emphasize the next steps. We hit a major milestone, but there's a lot of work to continue and ongoing. So I'm not going to read all of this, but to hit a few of the marks here. The Kodak moment in 23 of November, NCDPI awarded through the modernization program Infinite Campus as the core SIS, not only for Wake County, but for the entire state of North Carolina. It was in two phases. Phase one, approximately 120 PSUs went live in phase one, July of 24. We were in phase two. We went live July of 25. There's a lot of information on this and the timeline and the key milestones. One of the biggest, as I mentioned, we were in phase two. We did not have full engagement with NCDPI or Infinite Campus until August of 24. We didn't really kick off the project as a whole with that engagement until September of 2024. We always talk about runways of time here. If you look at the first diamond, which my son would call it a rhombus, from September all the way to the July 1st, that is an extremely short runway. That's like landing a jumbo jet on an aircraft carrier. Very aggressive timeline. We went live in production in October with our online registration. So we were supporting both systems throughout the implementation of Infinite Campus. The biggest marker there, we did in fact hit our go live date of July 1st. The project closing of September is the core SIS. Now additional work has begun. We're evaluating new modules, new capabilities, and the learning curve is still there for all of us. This is new for all of us. And I'll tell you, this initiative is not a SIS initiative. This was a district-wide initiative, a state initiative to get to Infinite Campus. And there was tremendous efforts and work and collaboration throughout the district, throughout our parents, throughout our students. We were all in. And it took that to get the level of success that we have. Here's a couple of highlights. So the data that made its way over the fence from PowerSchool, 12 years of data was converted. That pool of folks behind it, the armies, about 50 essential partners across 18 different departments and schools, were boots on the ground working on this thing to get it where it needed to be. Around 400 hours of training and support was provided to staff. There's never enough training. That's always a point in any SIS implementation anywhere in the country. Training is always one of those things. It's never enough. but there certainly was training and support available for our users. This is a pretty massive stat. 448,000 students were converted over to PowerSchool. That is a lot of data. And that's the student count. If you imagine a high school student's data profile compared to an elementary school, high school's going to have a whole lot more data coming over. That's a whole lot of data. In fact, we couldn't do it. We couldn't just press the button and let the data flow. It had to be done in batches to get that amount of data into Infinite Campus. And it had to be properly mapped and so forth. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Sandy.
Thank you, Jeff. As Jeff mentioned, thank you guys so much for allowing us to come today to celebrate the excellent work that has been done across the district to get us to this milestone. One thing that I always call out, and had some conversation with my DPI colleagues, Wake County did something no other district in the state did. We turned the lights on June 23rd. That was the day that my team received the data as it was converted from PowerSchool to Infinite Campus from the Infinite Campus team. We went live with users and students in a building 6 days later.
Yeah.
No one else in the state did that. Most districts had the whole summer to prepare and to be ready. We went with kids on buses in the building 6 days later. It's quite an accomplishment and a lot to be proud of. What we've got here is just some different supportive measures that we did through the project. We did updates with principals, had lots of articles. Communications was a fantastic partner with our Wake Connect website. We had newsletters that went out to various users within the district, just different user pools. We have newsletters that go to our data managers every week. We provide them with a newsletter every Thursday to keep them abreast of information around things that are happening that week, things in their schedule and their timeline. There was also community newsletters that we sent out, again, working with our partners in communications to help engage our families. I believe we have a slide here that talks about our parent portal engagement. That was a huge success. So we just wanted to highlight some of the things, the methods that we took to communicate with different people across the district for the project. Campus Passport. These are different things that we used for our training. We had our professional learning, and we had some sessions in person. We had virtual sessions with our Infinite Campus trainer. His name is Tony. Everyone in the district had an opportunity to meet him when through some of our virtual sessions. He's a fantastic guy. Campus Passport is a product that is still available to us. It was part of the contract that DPI secured with Infinite Campus. I believe the Campus Passport is available to us until June 26th, and then that portion of the contract will expire. So those are different options we had for training and the audience that was present for those. Also, some things we did to help support. We had a call list available when we went live, so we had people, boots on the ground, we could reach out to when we had issues. We had gone in and prioritized how we would get our help desk tickets. We had school members reaching out directly to log tickets that went straight to the SIS team. We had a tree amongst our team on who we, how we would address those to get some of our higher priority issues first. Year-round schools took precedence because, of course, they were in the building and had staff and students present. We have wonderful work with the digital leadership team who work with the gradebook contacts. Charles Patton did a fantastic job training those gradebook contacts, getting that information to the teachers. He's provided a wealth of information on the Wake Connect site, has a little hub there with all of their documents present. We've got FAQs there present, Campus Passport. One thing we've been doing, we started after about a month or so ago, and I'm continuing that for at least another month, maybe two. We are having virtual office hours twice a week, where we've invited administration in the building to log on and to ask questions, to bring forth issues, and have some open conversation about things that they might be needing at the time. This is just a little insight into what our team has accomplished. I have, including myself, there's 10 people on my team. We have received 6,177 help desk tickets since July 1st on this product. We have successfully closed 5,562 tickets. We've got some different categories here that were addressed in some of those tickets. We've also processed over 4,000 above baseline user access requests. So it's been a tremendous lift and some fantastic efforts across the team. And here is our slide about our campus parent portal. We positioned ourselves with our data to be able to take a slightly different approach than most districts did when they converted. We had certain fields populated that would allow us to send out an email to all parents who met the particular criteria so that they could set up their account without having to reach out to the school, get any access code. They could click directly in the link in the email and set that account up to access their students' information. That email goes out every Tuesday. It still continues to go out to any parent who has met the criteria within the student information system and has not yet created their account. At our last check about a week ago, 76% of the students in Wake County Public Schools have at least one parent account attached to them. That is quite a lift. A lot of districts close by haven't quite successfully implemented, so that was a great, great accomplishment for our students and our parents and better serving the students' needs. We have a total of 97,805 campus parent accounts. Lessons learned, it's always good to do a postmortem when it's still fresh on your mind. As Jeff mentioned, it's essential to engage our partners early. That was something I had a lot of concern over because it was such a journey and a short runway. DPI was great to work with us. Infinite Campus team was fantastic, and all the participants here in the district as well. Prioritize our data governance and our quality data. That is one of the things that helped us have a successful campus portal launch. Our role-based training opportunities, and our prepare for our post-launch phase. There were other modules that were included in the DPI contract, and we're going to take some time now over the coming months to evaluate some of those modules and see where we think it might be best for the district to engage next. Have some conversation with leadership and see what they believe is the next best step. The SIS we've obviously implemented. Online registration was successful, and Campus Passport we use for our training. And we just got listed here some of the other things we plan to evaluate with, I think the next slide highlights the next, yes. The analytics suite we're going to take a look at. That is actually more around like an early warning system. It provides a graduation scale for students. It takes things into consideration like stability, grades, absences, their discipline, so various markers that can help indicate how we predict that student will be successful in graduating with their cohort. Campus Workflow Suite, I believe, has the potential to really be a positive thing here at WCPSS. It would give us some flexibility with how we take attendance. It would give us the ability to set up attendance kiosk across our building, would even be able to set up attendance kiosk in each individual teacher's classroom using simply their laptop. It would also potentially, in combination with using the Campus Messenger product that is built in to Infinite Campus, provide us an opportunity to potentially have a more timely attendance communication with parents. So those two pieces sort of play off of each other. So at this time, if anyone has any questions.
All right, questions about the Infinite Campus implementation? Let's see, Mr. Hershey.
First, I want to just say great job. I told you, but I have not received any emails, concerns with it. So as far as District 6 goes, it's been very smooth. You mentioned evaluating additional features. I'm not really sure how to ask the question, but basically, if you're looking at an individual feature, how do you evaluate whether it's good or what perspectives? And I'm thinking from the parent perspective, making sure that's included, does it save money, that sort of thing. So kind of what are some of the,
Well,
what you're looking for?
I've been working very closely with some of our senior leadership in the district also to help identify some of the areas. That's why the workflow piece came up, as well as potentially using the Campus Messenger piece for notifying parents. That particular piece, we would have the ability to set up, right now, we are calling at the end of the day for absences that happen during the day. We would have the ability to set up attendance calls, potentially at a high school at the end of every period. An attendance call could go out. Obviously, there's potential pitfalls that we would have to talk through, but that one has the potential to really be a game changer for parents for the notification for the attendance for their students. So that one, to me, has a high priority along with some of the other people, other leadership we've talked with in the district. The analytics suite, for the students' perspective, we would have hopefully a better idea. Now, the analytics suite, that does build over time, obviously, because there's not, as more data is entered, as more things are there. I mentioned discipline data. This year our discipline data is included in Infinite Campus. So as that builds, that would become a slightly different indicator within Infinite Campus. But that system could help us identify students who may need more of some support, sort of like an MTSS perspective, so that we can make sure they are successful in graduating on time.
And just to add one thing to your question and to what Sandy just said, this is the first major implementation for CourseSys that we've done with the assistance of a project management office. And Trinice here, I'm so sorry, I was so eager to jump into the content. We didn't do introductions, but Trinice, introduce yourself, please.
I'm Trinice Cutler. I'm the Director of Project and Change Management.
Yep, and she, so we closed the project for the CourseSys, as we mentioned earlier, but there is a new project that just started to drive the initiative, the evaluations of the modules. And each module, case by case. Some of them are forward-facing, where parent involvement, and we would want to get that perspective. Some are just internal, functional things that are just a technical turn-on, turn-off type of thing. But the project management office is going to drive that initiative.
That's fantastic. The only other question I have, and I really mean, I'm very excited to have you and doing that, and that's really what I wanted to hear. My only other question is, when you were putting up the numbers and you said 76% and 97,000 accounts, does a parent with multiple kids have to make multiple accounts? Is
No,
that
sir.
baked in there, or is it, we have 97,000 parent accounts and that covers how many students?
That we have that number of accounts, and they have one account that connects all their students. 97,000 students have a parent account
I got
attached.
it, okay, my bad, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to make sure we get it, in terms of coverage, 97,000 out of 160,000 have an attached account.
Correct.
Dr. N.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation, and just to be transparent, I did receive an email
Yes, sir.
about one of the parents that had a problem with enrollment,
Yes, sir.
but that was fixed. So I think I appreciate the help desk and the people that got involved to get that taken care of so that their student can get enrolled. So the question I had is in that slide regarding the help desk, and you said that there were a majority of those help desk tickets were closed.
Yes, sir.
What kind of things were still outstanding that kept it from finishing the rest of those?
We have some issues where students have been duplicated that we have to reach out to the Department of Public Instruction and have some work done on their end. So there's a little bit of a time lag there. And then we also have some reports and things that people have asked to have developed. And there's a little bit of a lag there because we have to make sure, do some analysis to determine where's the best place to put this report, where would it be best used by the staff, and is there anything that we need to, data that we need to add? So those kind of things are maybe what's still out there.
More kind of internal
Yes, sir.
kind of components.
Yes, sir. We tried to make certain that we addressed issues where we had students who were not able to be enrolled, issues where, especially right now, it's college application time, so we're trying to get those things addressed as well, transcript issues and things like that, scheduling issues, trying to make sure we had those under control. But a lot of what's happening now is we've got something that we're kind of waiting on an outside entity for, or we're doing some analysis around development.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swanson and then Ms. Gordon.
Thank you all for lifting this up and the highlight and the overview that you all have provided. So my questions are, some of them have already been answered, so I won't belabor that point. But the question I did have, since we're talking about the parent pieces, are there any peer-to-peer trainings that are happening for parents? Let's say if there's a parent that's in the community or at the school that has mastered this particular piece, and instead of them, going through the hotline, are we encouraging parents to, go that route, or is that not an option that we're thinking through?
We recently had some family engagement at some of the schools that I believe there was some of that activity going on there. I have not been as involved in that, but I do believe there's been some family engagement opportunities.
That may be an opportunity for us to explore is, how do we, parents are very active in PTAs, and there's issues, training those PTA leaders to really engage. It's not necessarily doing the technical pieces, but some of the low-level or low-hanging fruit that they can handle, that could be an opportunity to really help and engage those families. The other piece I've heard, especially, and this may have been resolved now, but there was a certain timeline or time frame that teachers would have to submit attendance. Is that still a thing with Infinite Campus, or?
So let me explain that.
Yeah.
So one of the basic functionalities that's different between PowerSchool and Infinite Campus is teachers don't have the ability to take attendance except on the day that the student is there, right? They can't go forwards, they can't go backwards. Another big change is they don't have the ability to code attendance, meaning they simply enter an absence or a tardy. The way our system currently works for notifying parents for attendance is we send a file, our team pulls a file of all the absences that are unexcused at 4 o'clock every day, and we send that information to School Messenger, and those calls go out. Because they have to be unexcused, we run a job every day at 3:45 that takes all the unknown attendance and codes it to be unexcused so that we have a successful communication with School Messenger. That's where it came into, you have to have the attendance entered by 4 o'clock in order for the job to run, for it to update, so it can be sent to School Messenger.
I was under the impression from hearing from some families and teachers that it was, let's say, and I'll be very transparent, I was one of those teachers that forgot to do attendance. And so it would be that evening, or I'm pulling up like, darn, I forgot to do attendance. But in this particular case, it was some folks that were saying that if they did not do it within, let's say, the first 20 minutes or something, that it would not necessarily count. So perhaps it was just a learning curve.
It could have been
That was
a
it, so-
miscommunication.
Well, perhaps, I don't know if we need to do some follow-up to ensure that, that is taken care of. And then my final question would be, is there additional support that's happening for teachers that, let's say, that's getting hired tomorrow or in the future? How are we training those educators to maneuver through this? Since some of the trainings have already taken place, is there support within the school building that's happening to help that, or is it just here at the central office level?
That's one of the conversations that I'm actively having with some of our senior leadership and academics to talk about how we move forward with that. We have established gradebook contacts within the building, but I think we need a strong, this is just me talking, but I think we need a strong structure on how we keep those gradebook contacts in place within that building so that we have that foundation for our teachers who are coming in.
Thank you. Thank you for this information. I am one of those parents who is affected by the Infinite Campus rollover, switchover change. I had two questions. My first question is going back to, you spoke about how we accomplished going live in such a short time, the 6 days. While that's great, what were some of the hiccups that we experienced in that short amount of time, and what have we learned from that?
Great question. One of the big things I think that caused some issues is functionality in Infinite Campus is very different in just the database structure itself. I won't go too deep into that, but there is, students are attached to a household in Infinite Campus. All the persons within the system are in the same table, and a person is a person is a person. Students were duplicated and not necessarily in a household, didn't have an address. So we were scrambling sometimes to make certain that we got that information updated so that we didn't have a delay in transportation for anyone. That was, we had developed reports so that we could identify those students who didn't have an indicator, who had some transportation issues, and we could get those households updated. We spent a lot of time with our data managers and our registrars on that particular piece, but that's probably been our biggest challenge, was the online registration, processing that whenever they came in. Because while Jeff mentioned we did start using the OLR in October, we didn't use it where we approved and submitted it into Infinite Campus until July. So that caused us a little bit of a hiccup because it's very different. So we probably needed a little more time to walk through processing those online applications.
Okay. And then my second question is actually off of Mr. Swanson's question. So if absences have to automatically be coded as unexcused and teachers are not able to go back, let's just say, like Mr. Swanson said, I was one of those teachers. Sometimes I forgot to take attendance. We can put a little sticker. A lot of us have stickers on our laptops that say, remember to take attendance. But if I can't go back and change or actually submit attendance, how is an unexcused absence resolved? Because that's actually happened to my student where he was marked absent and I let the school know, like, hey, no, he's there. So how is that resolved?
So teachers can take attendance up until 11:59 p.m. of that day, okay?
Okay.
There are jobs that run periodically. One runs at 3:45 to update that attendance. One runs at midnight that night to update. And the school has the ability to run this same process and update during the day. While teachers can't change attendance, so if the student was counted absent but then comes in, they can report that information to someone who is the attendance person or the data manager or the registrar, and then they go back in and update the attendance. So they can then code it excused if a note's present. Also, when teachers enter the attendance, I believe it came to my attention, I wasn't aware we were doing this, but it came to my attention that some parents were using talking points to communicate, hey, my student's going to be out today, they have a doctor's appointment. So when teachers count that absence, they can actually, the data manager can see that comment, they can put a comment in and say, Johnny's out today for a doctor's appointment. And the data manager can go ahead and code that excused. Because when the job runs, all it does is pick up everything that's unknown and make it unexcused.
Okay.
And then the data managers have the ability to go back and update that to an excuse.
Does the data manager have the ability to do that after 11:59?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
They can go as far back as they need to and forward.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The questions that you all, Ms. Rice, did you have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I think my question, thank you all for your presentation. I celebrate you as well for your accomplishments that you feel around your team. I always love technology, but keeping in mind with our priority 3 around our operational effectiveness, I think my question is more toward our superintendent. Considering everything that's just been said and talking about data and the technology team really doing their part to make sure things can run and filling in the gaps, what are we doing to support staff to make sure that they are really aware of the resources that I just heard explained, so that families aren't impacted by an inaccurate recording and the resubmission process? And then how are we having accountability and follow through with our data managers to make sure, along with them getting I'm speaking even in a high school way. High schoolers, it's different when they're absent. They come and drop a letter in a basket, and the data manager gets to it when she gets to it. And so I'm looking at students who, particularly our seniors for the year and the pilot programs that we're doing, which are really fantastic. I hear a lot about that seniors, they're really trying not to have absences because they don't want to do over their 10, because they want to be able to not have to do an exam, but based upon their high scores in the classroom, that they've met those metrics. I'm just concerned, not a concern, I just want to know, how are we supporting that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's the professional development that we've done all along, particularly when you bring on a new system. And so you've already heard conversations about some of the glitches that we've seen. There are contingencies for all of that. And so the first thing is getting familiar with the process of Infinite Campus versus Power Schools. They're both cars. You got to learn how to drive this one versus the other. And so that's been the major part of what we've done, is to make sure logistically they know how to function. But then when there are cases where things need to be addressed in a different way, if attendance needs to be corrected, we still have all the ability to be able to make corrections based on staff that have permissions. So some of those permissions may have changed to where now it's more upper level, but everything that we do now is really about the professional development that we've always provided in using these systems. But as we move forward, we still have to identify some additional things that we may need to do. So if there are issues or problems with how we do the attendance monitoring, if there are issues with any other systematic things in the system, we'll have to go back and make sure we put that in place. This the PD that we've always provided, even with Power Schools and now Infinite Campus. I know the question was asked about when new people come on board. Well, we've always had that, and so now it is about making sure that there's additional support for school-level people that can support new people that come on. So it's the difference of bringing on a new person with Power Schools that we have for 12 years versus a new person with Infinite Campus. We're still new at it, but it's just making sure that the PD is in place when we recognize we need it. I'll share this now that I'm talking, that I've been through a number of SIS conversions, and this is the best that I've ever seen. And so even when I was at DPM, we were looking at who we were going to have to lead this project. The great thing about it is that they had a statewide SIS that was developed specifically for this. Power School developed that over time. It was a custom system. Although they had a different product that was different than what we were using. But this transition has been great, and I think that is manifested in the number of calls that you all have received, or in this case, I would say not received. And so what we will do is continue to identify additional PD that we may need to address a specific area. But I'll follow from the beginning all of the things that we put in place to make sure this was a smooth transition. But now it's about looking down the road if there's something different that we need to do, additional that we need to add.
Any follow-up?
No, I hear everything that we're saying about the systems, and I know that we've always had it, but I really was looking at more of at the school level, school base of the supports. As I heard former teachers or current teachers speak about the nuances of human behavior, of forgetfulness, just making sure that teachers know what they really can do and get it done. But I know that's something you may not know on the ground completely, or people just do it. I don't know. I'm just assuming. And then the other thing that I just want to ask is, thank you. I only had the same as Dr. Ean. I had quite a few people in the beginning with the enrollment process was glitched, but everything worked out and was really great. So thank you guys, and kudos for that great work. But I don't necessarily have anything else to say then.
Yeah, I'll go back and address the piece about making sure people do what they do. So the first thing I'll tell you is that we got two great teachers here, and they forgot to do their attendance sometime. We're not going to beat them up, but ultimately, as systems move forward, they take a lot of things out of your control so that you're forced to do it. So attendance is one of those. We've known you can always go back and fix attendance whenever we needed to. But now teachers know and understand you have to do this at this particular time. There are reports that schools have to do. You set those deadlines. And so now that principal can look a little close at some teachers and they'll get on board. But it's not about beating people up, but having some level of accountability where there's continuous improvement in it. But, we've still got a lot of...
And it didn't affect our 10-day numbers, right? So we...
That's right.
And then the last thing, Dr. Taylor, I just want to ask, this is, I guess, again for you, because I know we had tons of participation from our previous system that we used, and wanting, in the spirit of Mr. Swanson's statement as well, there are about, 65,000 more families that need to be integrated into the system. And in the only way, in the spirit of community and engagement and student success, parents need to have access. And so I hope that at the school-based levels, as from the district, that we're encouraging to make sure that every parent signs up that has the capability to do it so that they can monitor their students' progress. Because that's the only way for us to increase or to have the best participation for our school parent partnerships. Parents need to know what their children are doing so that we can improve student achievement. And that's what's important to me, is improving student achievement.
If I can speak to that really quickly, I've started to have some conversation with different, Dr. Norfleet, Michelle Woodson, some various people around what could be next steps we could take to make certain, one, that we've got our data in a place where people are receiving the email, and how do we make certain that we can get the rest of the families on board. So we're starting those conversations.
Thank you, because security and safety is important for us, having everyone in the system, a parent connect to every child in the system. So we really should, I hope that we'll be very assertive, even aggressive evenly, with getting these parents attached. to a student so that when anything arises, we really know how to reach parents and get their children.
And so that was one of the pieces of data that I was waiting on, that when we talked about that 70-some% of our parents that have engaged, that's a really high number. I also knew what the state's number was, but there's also LEAs that have been on for a year versus us just coming on. So I wanted to make sure we knew we were tracking at a higher number, an adequate number. And then looking at where we were under power schools versus Infinite Campus. Now, one of the things I know is that it's a much better app, and this is absolutely an opportunity to get parents to engage. I would imagine 95% of parents probably got a smartphone. I might be wrong about that number, but that is, and how we have families grouped together versus where it was under power school. I think this is a great opportunity to make sure that they have that connection to their kids right in their hands. And so that's something we do need to make sure we double down on.
And I believe that the upcoming scheduling season is really going to highlight those opportunities.
Okay.
Because there's ability to display course plans within that app so that the parent can see where their student is on track to graduate and what the necessary classes and courses that they need remaining, and to be able to say, yes, I see this. And so I believe the upcoming scheduling season will give us some opportunities to really reinforce that as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Jay.
So a couple of things. I do want to go back to the attendance issue and just, if we could make a note, because sometimes, especially at the high school level, there will be students that will not miss an entire day but may miss part of a day. And so it becomes very important, that time-sensitive nature of the confirmation of attendance. I might receive a call that says my child was absent for third period. I don't know why they were absent. When they come home, I find out, they needed extra time for test corrections, or maybe they had some sort of arts performance they were doing. Some dignitary was coming to the school and they pulled them out of class, right? But it's showing up as an absence. And so the ability to make sure that we can go back and accurately capture that, both for the exam exemptions, for athletic eligibility, for so many other things, is just really important. So please be aware of that.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Like a couple other board members, I did hear from some members of the public about some difficulties with transition, but it was very few, which with some of the families is a very good thing. I just want to make sure, where we have 97,000 accounts registered, when you look at the open tickets, are there still outstanding issues with parents that have signed up for access that haven't gotten access versus just where there hasn't been an attempt initiated?
We still see a few here and there. We've worked with our school staff to help them understand just how to do a password reset, how to make certain that while Infinite Campus gives a parent the ability to self-reset, one of the things that will block that is if a parent forgets to add an email address because it doesn't have an email address to send a password reset to. So our staff has the ability to log in and see that, so we're communicating with some of the schools, hey, reach out to this parent and have them go put that email address in. If a parent tries multiple times, I think it's 5 times, and it is a hard-coded Infinite Campus thing, if they try 5 times, it disables their account. We're starting a process to automatically clear those out so that a parent doesn't keep getting that frustration, but nowhere near the amount that we've had in the beginning.
Okay, great. The other area where I heard of some issues was there were some errors calculating GPAs on transcripts, particularly when working with Wake Tech. And I just wanted to know what the status of that was, if that was something you were aware of.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So let me speak to that for just a moment. There is a completely different process around the way the GPA works. There's a grading task associated to the course code. The grading task, which is basically the marks that are anticipated to be received by that student for that course code, the grading task has a grade scale associated to that particular course. If it's an honors course, it's a 4.5 grade scale. And AP, it's a 5. Standards for some of our CCP courses is also a 5. If you have to, The reason it rears its head for the Wake Tech CCP courses is because those courses have to be manually entered. So when they were manually entering those course codes, grade scales were not attached to the course codes, so they had to be wary of which grade scale they were selecting when they entered the grade. There was some human error on some of those. We talked through it, corrections were made. Actually, we had a meeting with counselors today and had a DPI representative to talk about all of this at our Fuquay training location. So we know we have those present, they were human error, and we're resolving those.
Great. And then the final thing is, when people do come to the board with questions about the implementation, questions about access to Infinite Campus, where should we refer them? I mean, I can send them to Mr. Padula, I can send them to Dr. Hill, but I don't know if there was a help desk
Yeah,
or a
there is a
designated
help
number.
desk, and obviously that's the best place because my team tracks all the tickets, so we can track and respond to those tickets.
Okay. And that help desk can be found where?
The number.
For families or
Yeah,
for
families.
staff?
The families.
We typically ask families to reach out to the school, and the school can reach out to us.
No. So they
And
would-
simply because we don't know all the families. Staff, there is on Wake Connect, they can go and search help desk, and there's a button they can click on and log a ticket.
Yeah,
So we
it would
haven't
be
been
to
clear on where that is, but we will know by tomorrow where to send folks.
I think the clarification that we're giving is parents should contact their child's teacher, and their child's teacher, if necessary, will contact the help desk.
Okay,
And staff know exactly how to find the help desk.
okay, so through the teacher. All right, thank you. Last questions, any final follow-up? All right, thank you very much. We
Thank you so much.
appreciate it. We know it's been a lot of work. All right. Next, we'll move into session 2 on our series on building the 3 pillars of artificial intelligence, AI readiness. So we'll give staff an opportunity to transition. And we welcome Dr. Thompson and Mr. Badura.
There'll be a quiz at the end, so.
Taking the quiz.
I'm going to use AI to answer. All right, welcome.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair Haggerty, board members, Dr. Taylor. Thank you for the opportunity. This is session 2 of the AI, and we're going to do a little bit deep dive into other components of AI today. But just to kind of step back, in the last session, we spoke about the foundational elements of AI, the artificial intelligence and machine learning. Again, the goal of these conversations is to really equip you with all the information around AI and machine learning as you start to look at policies and so you're well equipped with all the information, including the futuristic strategies you're going to work on AI, because AI is really impacting everything we do these days. So I just want to make sure we have that level setting there. Today, the focus is on data, right? I'm going to say AI is only as powerful as the data behind it. When we think about artificial intelligence, we typically think about all the technologies and chatbots and automation, but the lifeblood of AI is the data, right? Without data, without proper data, you can't do anything. So I can also say that, the data is the true, is the most valuable resource right now, right? Surpassing even oil. But unlike oil, which evaporates and which gets consumed, data is actually exponentially growing because it is estimated by the end of 2025 we're going to have 180 zettabytes of data. Well, what does it mean, right? It's too technical and all that. So it means if you store all the movies ever made, store them, and then multiply that to about 10 billions. That's the kind of data we are dealing with. That's a lot of data, right? So I think, there's a lot of data, but again, we have to make sure we process it the right way. A couple of things I'm going to talk about is when you talk about data, there are two streams of data, right? You have the structured data and the unstructured data. When you talk about structured data, it is the data which is available in rows and columns. So you can think about an Excel spreadsheet, you can think about the SIS system data, you can think about an ERP data, operational data, so forth and so on, right? And when you look at the unstructured, it's your Word documents, your voicemails, your videos, your chats. That's all unstructured. So traditionally, even prior to all this evolution of AI and everything, organizations typically use that 20% of the data, right? That's the using that data warehouse and all those things, right? But the structured data is only 20%. The unstructured is 80%. So the real power of AI is when you pull these two things together, right? And really make sure that you provide meaningful information to that, and you can make really, insightful decisions. So with that said, at the end of the day, AI without good data is like a car without fuel. It looks great, but you can't drive it, right? So with that, I know we have a long session. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Lainer to take it over.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you so much for having us back today. It's great to see everyone again and to see some new faces as well. For those of you that I didn't meet last time, my name is Anne-Marie Lainer, and I'm the K-12 Education Strategy Leader at AWS. And prior to joining AWS, I worked in public education for more than 30 years, and I was the CIO of the Rochester City School District in upstate New York for about 11 years, but always in education and always in technology and education. So, and again, I'm happy to be here today, and I have one new member of our team that is joining us today, Don Wolf. Don is going to be diving into data with you. Don leads data and analytics for our K-12 team at AWS. And prior to joining AWS in January of this year, Don served as the CIO of Portland Public Schools. And prior to that, there were a few other districts that he also served as CIO and technology director. So he has a lot of experience in K-12 public education as well. So anyway, we are happy to be here today. Today is all about data, which was a great TN. But before we dive in, I thought we would do a knowledge check just to see, kind of what you learned from last time. It's just a kind of a fun little knowledge check. You guys seem to enjoy the quiz that we did last time, so we're just doing the same sort of thing. It's a different tool. This is Mentimeter, but it's the same experience. So if you just use your phones and you just point it to the QR code, we only have 5 questions today. So what you'll see, you should see, it'll assign you a name, but you can change your name if you want to pick a different name. And you can let me know when you're all accessed that successfully. So we have 11, 12 people joined.
So we had to click on but you'll be able to input your name when we start the next question.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Yeah. Everybody in? All right. Go ahead, Ruby. Okay, so first question is teed up. Okay, we have 9 players.
Yeah, here's where you can input your name.
If you want to change the name that you've been assigned, feel free. You can be discreet, and you can pick something that nobody will know. Because there will be some totals on the screen. All right, everybody ready? Okay, first question, Kathleen. Okay, so how long has artificial intelligence been around? So you have 4 options: 69 years, 53 years, 19 years, or 5 years. So select the option that you think is correct. Oh, okay, everyone has voted. Let's see where we are. 53 years. Okay, well, we're close. But it's actually been around for 69 years.
which is shocking to think about because when we think about AI, we think of like the last few years especially, because that was really the advent of generative AI, ChatGPT, which took the world by storm. And of course, we knew about AI prior to that, when we would go online shopping and you'd get those pop-ups that said, hey, you people that bought that also liked this, right? That's AI behind the scenes. But we don't think about the fact that it's been around for 69 years. So with the birth of AI was actually 1956. So you can use that and test somebody else sometime. Okay, next question. Okay, it took Uber 70 months to reach 100 million users. How long did it take for ChatGPT to reach 100 million users? So 55 months, 30 months, 9 months, or 2 months? Okay, everyone has voted. Let's see where we are. 2 months. Okay, yes. Everybody, almost everybody got that one correct. That's absolutely correct, which is really, when you start to think about it, 2 months, 100 million users. That just shows the unprecedented technology adoption of generative AI. It's the fastest growing consumer application in history. And this really marked the beginning of mainstream AI adoption, which is, of course, why we're here today, right? Why you've invited us all here, because we all know that this is here to stay, and we want to make sure that we are prepared and can utilize it most effectively. All right, we have 3 more questions. Next question. Okay, what is not, this trick question, not a potential risk of AI? Hallucinations, speed, bias, or security and privacy? So again, which is not a risk of AI? Thinking. And I should have said this, if you don't answer, it's okay. It'll just skip over, so it's okay. Okay, that is correct. Speed is not a potential risk of AI. I know it's difficult to think about, like that was a trick question, but hallucinations, unfortunately, are a risk of AI, right? That is why we always have to be careful about the solutions that we're using, the foundation models that are behind those solutions. We have to understand the AI tool that we're using, and we always, most importantly, have to have a human in the loop, right? You can't just believe everything that comes out of AI, everything that's generated. These models are getting better and better. But you still need a human in the loop. Same thing with bias. Who developed AI? Humans, right? Humans have inherent biases, and also the data that is behind generative AI was developed by humans, and so that data then also has inherent biases. And security and privacy is of utmost importance, right? So the consumer models of AI, any data that you put out there in order to help you generate something meaningful is always going to be out there. There's no way to get it back. So we want to make sure that any solution that you or your staff or your children are using are ones that are secure, and where the data itself, if it is private data, is not used to train the underlying model. Okay, next question. I think we actually are going to be seeing the leaderboard, right? So let's see who is in the lead. Definitely not Sam. Oh, Kenneth. I wonder who Kenneth is. Okay. All right, we have 2 more questions. So this one might be a little tricky. What are AI agents? So we learned about this last time. This is a newer part of generative AI. So AI agents are an AI system that can only process natural language, autonomous software systems that can reason, plan, and act, physical robots, or human assistants trained to use AI tools. Everyone voted. Okay, most folks got that one right. Autonomous software systems that can reason, plan, and act. So an example of this, like why are AI agents used? It's to speed things up, right? So if we have complex workflows that have a lot of manual effort required, it's great to think about how AI and AI agents can be used to speed that process up. A quick example, and I hope I don't steal Don's thunder, but a quick example of a K-12 specific AI agent solution that uses AI agents. It was Region 13 is an educational service agency in Texas. They wanted to develop a solution that helped teachers keep their students on track. So they developed Pulse, and Pulse is an AI assistant for teachers to allow teachers to keep a pulse on their students. And so one of the things that Pulse does is at the end of every day, it takes the data, maybe it's from assignments that the students have completed or tests, and it actually identifies students that may need some additional supports, or it maybe identifies students that have done something exceptional. And it creates a podcast, an actual podcast for the teacher that the teacher can listen to on the way home from work. And it really brings forward some of the students that they potentially need to follow up on. So that is an example of a solution that uses AI agents. It was actually AI agents were used to build it and are used within it. So that's just an example. Okay, we have one more question. So which is not a layer in the foundations of an AI-ready organization? Communications layer, use case and application layer, AI and model layer, or data foundation layer? So we learned about this from our colleague Mary Strain, who was here at the last session, and she talked about the foundations of an AI-ready organization. Okay, great. Everyone has voted. And that's right. A communication layer, most of you got that. That was the most popular answer. That is not a layer for an AI-ready organization. The data layer is by far the most important, because if you don't have quality data, if you don't have data governance, if you don't have data that's accessible, then the answers that you're going to be getting out of your AI solution aren't going to be the ones that you need, right? You can't count on those answers. So start with the data foundation layer, which is why we're here today and what you're going to learn all about. And then, you move up the stack to the AI and model layer. It's also very important that you select an AI foundation model that is going to be the best for your solution if the solution is being developed. And you can also use AI to actually help prepare your data for your AI solution. And then the use case and application layer, that is really the last. That's where you don't say, what is everyone else doing with AI? You start with, what do we need? What is a problem that we have that we want solved? Or what is a priority that we have? And how can AI help? So those are the three foundations of an AI-ready organization. All right, let's see the final totals.
Third place.
Okay, Casper. Whoever's Casper, congratulations. All right, that's it for our knowledge check. So now I'm going to turn it over to Don to dive into data.
So again, just for reference, my name is Don Wolf. I'm a recovering K-12 CIO. Anne Marie was correct, I spent 34 years in public K-12 education, both as a classroom teacher all the way up through technology leadership before joining AWS in January of this year. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of a cartoon, and I'm just going to give you a minute to read it here as we're getting ready. And while you're reading it, I'm just, as questions come up, please feel free to make this interactive, engaging, jump in. Don't make me drone and feel like you have to save your questions till the end. If something intrigues you or if something doesn't sit right, please, let's address it there. The more interactive we can make this, the better off we're gonna be. Love starting this with this cartoon. There's an underlying assumption here, particularly in my experience as a K-12 leader, is that if we throw enough technology at any given problem, that is going to solve the problem. And when we talk about adopting generative AI or AI solutions, enterprise-wide AI solutions, that couldn't be further from the truth. What we really have to focus on is the strategic plan for the district, what the people and processes are that are at play in the district, what already artifacts we have, the data that we have at hand, before we can then apply the technology to where we want to go. So knowing this is a starting point, technology isn't the first thing we think about, it's trying to adapt it to our strategic plan. Yes, sir?
Only because it was brought up earlier. I think it was stated that in the school, or not in the school system, but in general, unstructured data to structured data was 80-20. Is it different for data within a school system at all, or is it still that kind of divide? And the other question, because you had it on the quiz, and I don't know if we have a closed data set in the school system yet. That's how we operate. I thought that's...
So the 80-20 is a general across the industries, but it's pretty close. Even for the K-12, it's pretty close because there's a lot of data which is not structured, right?
Okay.
So all the Word documents you're looking at, there's a lot which happens, right? So that's a general kind of a proportion between structured and unstructured.
Okay.
Typically, as I said, historically, we always tapped into the traditional side of things, which is structured data, right? But now, because of the AI, we're able to pull information both from the structured and unstructured and make meaningful insights.
Are school systems worried about hallucinations if we have our own data that's kind of being used?
I will get into a little bit of that, but yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes, that is a consideration. That's absolutely a concern that we need to be focused on. And what is the primary differentiator for enterprise-wide AI adoption in a K-12 space?
So one thing I would add there is, even though when you look at it, there are a lot of commercial tools available, like your ChatGPTs, your Gemini, your Perplexities and everything, but we're actually sitting on the true gold, which is our own data.
Right.
Right? Because when you start to pull the structured and unstructured within your organization, that's the power. I think that's where you can really see a lot of insights. And what just sitting in an SIS system, it's just a silo system there, it's purely SIS, but when you connect that information with other sources of unstructured and structured, you're going to see the true power of AI.
And connected in such a way that it's safe, right? So
Right.
not connected in a commercial-based solution,
That's right.
because that's your security.
This is a wonderful conversation because all this is true. And what we're finding in K-12, we're talking about K-12s tend to run 80% of their daily operations tends to be functioning from unstructured data, where 20% of it is that structured data, but they interact with one another. So the question becomes, if we're going to look at a Gen AI or a generative AI adoption for an enterprise-wide solution, what is going to be critical to that? And the critical differentiator is your data. It's the critical fuel for anything that you do. And we'll talk about some of those concerns, some of those warning signs here in a little bit. But there's three key principles that we focus on, is that more isn't always better. Quality data that is purpose-built for the application that it's going to be used for the AI application that's going to be for, is far more critical and far more important than having a boatload of data. The use case specific data needs, moving that data into structures that are being available or purpose-built for consumption by the application on the other side of that. And that the data has to be available and accessible, because in K-12 we have lots of different data sources and a lot of them are all over the place. We have our SIS data, which doesn't necessarily intermingle with our ERP data, which does intermingle with some of our transportation data and that sort of things. How do we build those data sources together so that they're available and accessible while we also are maintaining privacy and security around this? So when we think about how do we build an AI foundation based on our data, think about it as building a house. First, you have to have quality materials. You have to have materials that are good, so good data. You have to have an architecture that supports what you're wanting to do in that space. That might be, whether it's going to be structured database or data warehouse, or whether you're going to be tapping into those board documents that loosely live in some sort of accessible file format. You need to have room to grow because the data is not shrinking, the data is growing. So you need to store this data in a flexible format that is not only expandable, but also cost-effective as you grow and expand it. And then you need to think about the security of it. We lock our homes, we lock our windows. We need to make sure this data is critical, as we've seen in the last 5 to 7 years of explosion. Cybersecurity attacks on school districts, it's rich, and people are wanting it, and we don't want to use AI tools that are going to inadvertently make it available to the wrong folks. So looking to centralize and own our own AI deployments is critical, but we also have to prepare the data and make sure it's secure and privacy is tantamount there. So data is going to be your AI differentiator. There are lots of generic LLMs or AI models out there that people can use and are being used in your buildings all day, every day. There's not anybody who's not using one of the different things that is just using generic, available on the internet information. What is going to make your implementation different is how you focus what your strategic elements are, where is it we want to see growth and use of this data, and how we're going to put that together. So data at the end of the day is the rocket fuel for whatever you're going to want to do with this. So when we have these conversations with other school districts across the country, we often get the question, what are the challenges and what are some of the common things you're hearing from other K-12 institutions? And really the biggest challenge is every K-12, and I use this phrase lovingly, almost all K-12s are uniquely identical in many different ways. We have many different disconnected systems. I mentioned some previously, and we have many of our schools standing up some of their own things, or many of our internal operations standing up outside of IT or outside of the formal governance structure. Many applications are being put in place that are valuable, that are very critical for the operations or for the understanding of our students' growth and for their expansion of their learning and that sort of thing, but they're siloed, they're disconnected. The trick is, the biggest thing we're struggling with is how do we bring all of that information back into a format that we can use, both structured and unstructured, so that we can leverage the promise that AI is bringing for us. So all of those things that you're seeing up there is absolutely common across the board for every district we're talking with across the country. It's how do we address these and how do we move forward and mitigate some of that. So,
Question for
yes, sir, please.
Can you go back one slide?
Yes,
So,
I think so, yep.
I mean, don't we have to identify what we want out of it before we define the governance models and what data we actually want to use?
Absolutely.
So, I mean,
I'm speaking in very high terms here.
Sorry,
I'm gonna drill down. No, that's a great question. We don't want to put any carts before any horses, so I'm trying to set a little bit of a landscape of kind of the general broad, and then I will talk a little bit more specifically on how do we get there and how do we drill down and how do we build those use cases that actually address all of these problems and maximize the data that we have available in some specific ways. So this is our goal. At the end of the day, you all here are spending a lot of your time as board members, private time. That's, if you're not any different than Oregon, your unpaid time, and it's not an insignificant lift to serve on a school board because you believe in the students of the school district you're serving. Same with all of the executives that are sitting around this table. They believe in our students and what education offers them. That's our end goal here, is we want to see our students succeed, right? AI and utilizing our data for that can help accelerate that. It's where do we want to put our focus? Because we can do all kinds of things, but we can't do everything. We can do some things really well. We have to focus on that and kind of figure out where does our data strategy that we're going to need to develop, if we don't already have one, align with what is the strategic goal from the board, from the district, and our community to make this happen. So in all things that we talk about here, as long as we're leaning back into what we want to do is provide a better outcome for our students, and that everything that we implement is for that end goal, that's a great place to be starting from. Oftentimes, as a tech leader, I apologize, it's a little bit of an editorial for me, that it seemed to get forgotten in some of the adults in the system that wanted this opportunity to do something that was, the students were the secondary concern. And so I'm trying to use my voice wherever I can, that our students need to be our primary concern. And if I'm preaching to the choir, amen, and I'm so glad to be at a table that is choir preaching right there. All of this talks about is leading towards a data-driven organization. And when I talk about, or when we talk about what is a data-driven organization, it's an organization that's going to harness the data that you have as an asset. It's going to use that asset to drive sustained innovation and to create actionable insights that improve decision-making for your students and for the outcomes that your constituents, the parents, the community, the teachers care about. And that's going to build higher trust. All of these 6 things over to the right side are the key drivers that help get us to that data-driven organization. And the first one I'll start with, it starts at the top. It starts with the district leadership, from the superintendent and the board of directors, to say, this is an asset, how do we take advantage of it, and what structures do we need to put in place, and how do we make this an actionable step that we do every day, that we're going to dream big, think big, and empower our folks to do that as well, using the data we have at hand. It means creating shared leadership, a conviction between the business units, and that's all of the business units. I don't just mean the financial office, but transportation, security, HR, teachers, school supervision, with IT, because IT shouldn't be leading any of this by themselves. And I will get to that more specifically here in a minute. We have to put forth a commitment to upskilling our folks, both the people that are producing the data for consumption and the consumers, because we're entering an age where self-service data consumption is a reality, and it's a reliable reality that we can count on and we can get actionable insights out of, but folks have to see that it's a thing that we can do. The other one right up there next to the leadership is that robust data strategy. I haven't spoken with Shashi and Ken enough to know where we're at on that spectrum here at Wake County. But if you don't have a robust data strategy that points back to the district's strategic plan, it's going to be hard to do all of the things that we need to do to take advantage of AI and make our data an asset. So that needs to be put in place, and we need to be thinking about it. Doesn't mean it all has to happen all at once, and it's a massive one-time thing, but we can take it one use case at a time and build on it. We need strong collaboration. We need to have chief information officers that work great with our chief HR officers and our CFO and our superintendent and our deputy superintendents to make all of this come together seamlessly and trade off where we need to and make sure that communication's open. And most importantly, we need to build this all with privacy and security in mind. We don't want any of our students leaving our districts having had their data compromised in any sort of way, shape, or form. That's a lot there, so if there's questions, I would understand. All right. I like to think about all of those things in terms of a maturity model, climbing a data maturity curve, which starts at the lowest level, which is we've got data and it's descriptive data. It tells us about something. We can take it and we combine that data, all the way up to the prescriptive data. And that's that prescriptive data that says, I've got this data and I know what I need to be pre-planning to provide for students in these conditions to ensure that their success. I know by 3rd grade they need to be reading at this level, and here's these students, and so here's the prescriptive plan of reading we're going to put in place. It's a wide range. A school district that wants to fully implement and take advantage of AI and the promise it can bring and leverage the data they have to recognize where they're at on this data maturity. And it's okay, and I would actually say it's imperative that we're really honest and say if we're at the descriptive or the diagnostic level, that's okay. Because it's not a race, there's not a prize at the end goal, but you have to build those foundations. You can't skip them. As hot as AI is right now, and as much as everybody wants to jump to that predictive and that prescriptive layer of using our data, if we can't define it, if we can't diagnose with our data, then we can't predict and we can't be prescriptive with it. So we've got to start, we've got to be honest with ourselves and build that foundation up, just like we're building a house. We've got to put a solid foundation down first and be honest. Where are we at in this maturity level? And let's move intentionally. The beautiful thing is, in some of these things, people are going to be in part of the loop. You cannot do this without the humans at the table. In some of these elements, we can employ AI agents that can help us with the description of our data, the identifying the data that we have, cataloging the data, making sure that we're applying the appropriate security controls and things like that as we move through this curve. That's the goal. All right, so again, building on this, let's talk about some modern data best practices. In most K-12 districts that I work with across the country, and in my own experience, we tend to focus on the technology first, and then the operations, and then how it impacts the strategy. And when we're doing that, we're creating a more disjointed, a more siloed, and a much more expensive landscape for us to have to maintain and to buy into. For example, I will use an example from my own career as a CIO, is a cabinet member, a partner of mine, a peer of mine on cabinet would come to me and say, we had this issue with principal retention, so we bought this application that we think is going to solve that issue. IT, you need to make it available and run it and manage it for us. And that becomes one more system that IT now has to manage in a silo, because that came out of that chief HR officer's office, not out of the district's strategic plan and what our strategic goals were. It was putting the technology before we figured out how we're going to operationalize that and before how that was going to impact our strategy. We need to flip the script and say, again, student success at the forefront. This is what we're focused on. What are the strategic goals we need to manage first? That's our thing. Then we build the operations around that. What are the workflows? What are the people and the processes that we need to have in place to support that? Then we bring the technology in and say, okay, what technology do we need to do to support this metrics with these operations, and let the technology support it. We need to get back to that place of technology supports the strategic roles and where we're heading with the operations. Does that resonate? Right now, most of our K-12s are continue to operate on that top line. We see something bright and shiny at a conference. It promises marketers are really good. It's going to solve all of our issues. All of your third graders are going to be reading at grade level by this year if you just deploy this application. But how's it being operationalized? How are we assessing for that? How are we taking into account those students that have IEPs or have a different way of doing this, or second language learners? None of that is accounted for in that sort of model. So this is a good place to stop and ask you a question. Now, hopefully you saw this. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot and I'm not going to call anybody out, but I will ask for volunteers. As we think back through the district's strategic goals and where we're wanting to head and what we're hoping AI can help us achieve, what are your top success metrics that align with your strategic plan? And what specific data or analysis do you need to effectively measure progress against these metrics? I'm just going to let that bake for a second. Now, I'm just curious, and you may have seen this in the slide deck as you got a little bit earlier this week, if there's anybody that is willing to volunteer to share kind of what their thoughts are. What do we consider our top success metrics, and what data might I need to align with that?
All right, does anyone want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, certainly our graduation, our growth rate. I know we talked about attendance, getting kids to school. What am I missing?
Grade level proficiency and then
Yeah.
analysis by subgroups.
There you go. Yeah.
That's, the subgroups is an interesting part for me. Big goals up here, how does that impact and what does that mean? Because that's how we operationalize and that become the people and process parts, right? Yeah. That's great. Okay, I'm not going to make anybody squirm. I'm not going to call out anybody, but I thank you. Those are all great things to be thinking about. And as we go down this journey for AI and what do we want to do for us, these are the questions we should be asking. What are the metrics that we're going to be measuring the success by? And what is it we want to see? What is the data that we need to have to justify that? So back to the earlier question, starting high level, let's get a little bit more narrow in our focus and talking about a modern data architecture. So when we talk about a modern data architecture, we're not talking about one of these. We're not talking about building a battleship. And a modern data architecture is something that is lightweight, it's agile, it's built for change. The times we're in, everything's going to change. Your success metrics are going to change, your strategic goals are going to change with time. We need to build a data system and a cohesive ecosystem that can change with it, that is cost-effective to change, that isn't tossing out a whole ship with that, and that is built with a whole bunch of unknowns, quite honestly, built into it. When we build most of our systems in K-12, and I will go back about 14, 17 years, when data warehouses became the thing, this was going to change education, it was going to make us data-driven, and at the time, it was the best we had to offer. And it was a great big monolithic system that had all of the attributes that we knew. We knew we needed all of these elements, much like a battleship. And all of the knowns were put in a bill of sale, and then we could build that. That's not the world we live in anymore, and that's not really what we found to be the reality, is that, oh, we forgot about this data set. We forgot about this use case scenario. We forgot about this question that constituent was asking in the southeast corner of our district. How are we going to account for that? We need to be able to build a system or build the framework of a system that doesn't know what all of the imperatives are going to be, that can take in new information, plug it in, and move it forward. So we can't build a battleship because we don't know all the components. We need to build something that is agile, that we can plug things in and out of as they change, and that can be flexible to change with our goals, with our changing populations. And because we're getting so good at solving this problem, what's the next big problem we need to solve? And where do we get that data from? And how do we operationalize that data to move us forward?
Don, the only thing I would add to that is you don't have to think about building it all at once too, right? So you're not building for the unknown, but you also can see progress along the way.
And I will highlight that again here in a little bit, but that's a very good point. We don't need to build something this massive all on the outset. So when we talk about modern data architecture principles, they're founded on a number of principles. It's cloud forward. Doesn't mean it's cloud only. It has to be all in the cloud. It can be a combination of hybrid cloud. It can be a combination of multiple cloud solutions. It doesn't have to be, but it needs to be cloud-based because cloud is where you're going to get the best bang for your buck for being agile, flexible, and being able to move things in and out, and that is adaptable to the change of technologies as we move forward. It needs to be in a component architecture. At one time, you might need a data warehouse to answer a particular problem. Another time, you might need just a bucket of Excel spreadsheets that are going to have the information that can answer that. Separating your systems of engagement from systems of record, those are two very specific systems that you want to have them separate so your consumers are using one end, your producers are using the other end, and it doesn't drag the system down. We need to have purpose-built scalable storage. I'm not going to go through all of these. Those are the first four that come to my mind, but there's a number of things that go into a modern data architecture that help you become flexible and help you get the most bang out of the dollars you spend, because we're all resource constrained in K-12 right now, and that's recognized. The biggest one, though, and one that has some statistics behind that I'm going to mention here, is the data lifecycle management and the governance piece of it. That's that critical piece that we're going to need that helps us identify our people and processes, but also helps ensure privacy and security of the data as we're moving it forward into these modern data architectures. So, what does this look like in practice? This is
could look like a very technical slide, but it's not. It works from top to bottom. When we spend time talking about the data lifecycle, just to give you an idea of how things are going to flow and how they should flow and what they're going to cover. So it starts at the top with all of the different data sources that you could possibly think about. Your external data sources like spreadsheets or photo buckets or video buckets from your YouTube channels or Excel spreadsheets, existing databases that you might have, existing data warehouses you might have, documents, all of those things are your collections. You need to identify it, bring it to a singular place, and then you're going to ingest it. You're just going to bring it in to that layered flexible storage. There's lots of different ways you can do it. It can be file shares on the network. It can be a big bucket of simple storage in the cloud. There's all kinds of data, but you need to have it somewhere centralized that you can use. Now, this is where AI helps, and this is where the folks come in. You can start cataloging and classifying that data. What kind of data is it? We need to, this is where that governance process comes into play. How do we identify what data is important to us, what data is critical, and how we're going to access it and make sure it's available. We start integrating and mastering the data so that we can start answering purpose-built questions. Do I need a visualization on where the populations are in my district? Do I need where our lunch services are being most utilized? Whatever it is, let's master that data and get into a collection that folks can use. Transform that data down a layer, stand it up in purpose-built storage, because the different applications are going to define what type of storage it needs. AI generally likes vector-based databases to drive that, so some of that we might move in there. Sometimes it can just be a simple collection of PDFs that drive your AI solution, whatever it is. Then you apply your visualizations, your queries and analytics, your AI chatbots, all your predictive modeling, and that creates that visual area where folks can access it. The middle part is where kind of the magic, I'd like to say, happens, because that's where your governance goes in. That's where your people are managing who has access to it, who doesn't have access to it. Oh, this particular data set can be available to the public, because there's certainly applicable data sets that the community of Wake County wants to see and probably has access to. So this is what a modern data life cycle looks like, and it can be this whole thing for one particular use case, for one specific thing. And we're going to get to that, because that's where I'm going to encourage you to go, is let's focus on a single use case here in the future. What is critical for this is the data foundations. We talked about this as the house model a little while ago, and I found this one interesting. I wanted to just reiterate that you have to have the quality materials, you have to have the data available. It's got to be placed in an architecture that works for you or that works for the use of the consumption of that data. You have to have the flexible storage, and most importantly, you have to have that governance to provide that security and that privacy over that. 46% of executives are now saying that data governance is critical to any of their AI efforts as we move this forward. So, Gen AI promises a whole new world of wonderful things, great predictive analysis, great ease of use, removing some burdens of our work, but also at the same time, it creates some new risks and some new challenges. So this should be a familiar, this was part of Mary Strand's presentation a couple of weeks ago. Hallucinations, bias, copyright and IP considerations, security and privacy. Again, that one's near and dear to my heart, so I'm going to keep bringing that up. Those are all things that you really have to focus on. The nice thing is, when you utilize your own data as the core, as the training set of data, and as the knowledge base for AI and AI agents to draw from, you limit the hallucinations. You have control of the bias of what's in that data. You have understanding of where that came from, so you address a lot of these right off the bat, as opposed to just using generative, generic engines that are out there. Go ahead.
Because I asked about it earlier, even if we have our own data and it reduces the number of hallucinations, how does a school system or any company check for hallucinations? Are we running it twice to make sure whatever data we're trying to present or whatever we want, are we running it 2 or 3 or 4 times to make sure it all matches?
There's a number of different ways, and there's actually some of the ways with AI actually has tool sets that can do that, so you're not taking human time. But you can't do these things and put out reports and/or look at information without humans in the loop. You always have to have a human in the loop and understanding the data and questioning what they're getting out. That becomes part of that upskilling that I talked about at the very beginning. People have to know that hallucinations are a real thing. You need to be reading these things. You can't just take a prompt and get something out and say, it's good to go. You have to use critical thinking. We're all professionals in a school district, and we have to apply that to the same things we're pulling out of AI. I am certain there are folks in this room that have used AI to generate maybe a presentation that you have seen at this board, but I guarantee you every single one of them went through that with a very fine-tooth comb to ensure that everything they put in there was factually correct and had images that were generated that were appropriate and not. So it just becomes a way of thinking and a way of operating within that. Because at the end of the day, there's not at this point in time with the technology 100% way to remove hallucinations from AI-generated material. It's getting better. We're getting finer all the time. The models that are being provided and limiting the data sources improves that drastically. But again, it's still a reality. Anne-Marie, I thought you might have had a comment there.
Oh, no, I think that was.
Oh, Shashi?
I think just to add to that, I think going back to what Mr. Hershey were asking about, when you think about AI, all the way going back to 2022 when we initially heard about it, there was a lot of hallucinations. But I think the models started maturing and fine-tuning. The quality of data is much more better. So you see the hallucination levels actually kind of reduce, but it still exists. So it's an iterative process, training those underlying models to make sure that we're getting the right information.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I've underestimated how much time I was going to take through this. So I'm going to get through a few.
That's what I was a little bit worried about with some of the discussion. But
some of the discussion. So I'm going to skip through. You've got this. This is AWS's 6 pillars of responsible AI. Lots of conversations still going on about it, but it's things you should be thinking about as you deploy AI across the board. Again, we've talked about the house model, so I'm not going to belabor that. What I am going to highlight on this particular slide is that the technology devoid of the people and processes is not the effective way to deploy technology. Focus on the people and processes with guidance from the strategic plan, apply the technology, and that goes for building your operating model about how do we build a modern data architecture that leverages our data to use with AI. So I did want to highlight, I don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this because Anne-Marie also wanted to share a couple of great examples of how AI is being employed across the country and other K-12 organizations. Region 13 is an education service center in Texas. I think we got that one, and I can let you read about that. That QR code takes you to a white paper that they penned with AWS, so you get a feel for what they're doing, a more holistic view. And then also talk about Peninsula School District, which is a very small school district in Washington, near where I'm from, that had a number of challenges, and they have a CIO that's a forward thinker, and they partnered with Vanderbilt University that built an open source solution, their platform that you can bring in, deploy on your infrastructure. They went that route because they were having all kinds of challenges with people using different sources of AI on generic data and that sort of thing. It was getting very costly, expensive, lack of standardization, no security, the data was all over the place. They brought this, they deployed the solution, everybody started using this, they were kind of forced into this box, and it answered a lot of those problems. So there's a number of different ways you can approach the AI solution. Are we going to have time for the demo? We also, does that include question and answers? Because if so, then we might want to skip the demo.
I would say you want them to finish in about 5 minutes.
I am so sorry.
No.
Get excited.
We need to move forward.
I mean, we can go 9 more minutes. It'll take us a little bit over, but we can make that.
I'm going to bounce through some of these. I'm sorry, but I think to your point, the biggest thing you can do is think big. What do we want to achieve? Ultimately, start small. Pick out that very particular use case. And I'm gonna tell you, with Shashi and Ken in the room, don't pick out an IT use case. Pick out something outside of IT that forces those business units to work together, that is part of your strategic plan, and then repeat and build it out with these principles in mind. And then you start to scale it. You build that muscle, you build that small use case, and then you start to build. You can't do everything all at once. Start with one thing, make it small, make it repeatable, and get going and expand. Again, this reiterates what I just said. I'm trying to, when you look at this video, I'm not going to narrate it, there is intentionally no sound to it, but it's a use case where you can use your data to build and create visuals from end users all on their own. They don't have to have any coding knowledge. They can ask real-world questions to a prompt that was built using the NCES school characteristics data. It's kind of a fun data just to go through and look and see what is possible, along with being able to use generative AI to build static, typical dashboards that folks use. With that in mind, I'm going to stop and go straight to the Q&A. I apologize for going a little bit longer than we
That's good.
thought.
I thank you, and I apologize, I wasn't here for the first session, so, I was able to go back and review some of the information, but I might be coming at this a little bit behind. But I'm a little bit unsure of the direction or what we're looking at, because a lot of this seems like it is the mile-high view looking down. But we've been told, or we've been tasked with how we develop policies around AI. So, what I see is, if I can give you an analogy, if I'm going to buy a car, I want to look at how the car will meet my needs, right? So I don't necessarily need to understand internal combustion as much as I do need to understand questions around mileage or safety or capacity, hauling, things like that in terms of how I will use the vehicle. Will the vehicle meet my needs? And with this presentation, there's a lot of great foundational information that's being shared, but I'm unsure what, in our role as the Board of Education, we're necessarily supposed to do with that.
And I would apply the exact same logic to 2 slides ago. Think big. You need to develop AI policies. Start small. What's the use case that IT and another business partner is going to bring? And what might be policy implications for that? Quite often we have found, and I have seen in my own experience, that we've tried to say we need all of these separate AI use policies when in fact it becomes in-user operations and policies that we already have that we might need to tweak for the use case that we're trying to implement as a district. So using that particular use case, starting asking those questions, where is AI going to impact this particular project, and what policies are going to need to be either reshaped or that we will need to draft to specifically address AI, because you can use that one use case to expand out to the broader. If you're going to have that question there, it's probably going to apply across the board to most other AI deployments.
Okay, so if I understand you and I understand the presentation, the information today helps us think about data collection and building those layers, and there's certain things we'll need to consider concerning, privacy of data, propriety of data, what can be used, what can't be used. But thinking a little bit more broadly, I'm curious, and these are open questions, you may not have answers, but they're more for the board members around the table too. Are we, the board, looking at policies around building our own generative AI system? Or is this more about using commercial products and how we would apply them? I think we have questions about acceptable and unacceptable uses for AI. For me personally, based on some of the information shared, I think there's a lot of benefits to using these tools to analyze data. I'm very wary about using these tools to make recommendations and to recommend actions. I think about how we've had past controversies about data use, EVAS and other tools that are out there that we rely on other vendors for, specifically where we have predictive models for student success. And we know statistically we can plug a lot of data into an algorithm, and we can get some pretty good predictive results about student success based on things like wealth or zip code. But we also know that it's unfair to treat every student as if this will be the outcome, only just what past data has shown. And so I have concerns about how we will use the data for recommendations or placement or identification broadly versus like individual student achievement. I do think we'll have other questions just around, more budget questions, more application questions we'll need to look at, maybe a little bit outside of policy, but things about costs versus practicality. Are you using AI for a function that you don't need to use AI for, just because it's there and it's new and shiny, right? And then, how efficient is that in a world where our budget dollars get tighter and tighter versus where we can see real efficiencies and save money and save resources using AI. We've talked about using AI for troubleshooting, for looking for inefficiencies, for ways to look at work orders or purchase orders or things and pull data for us. But I would still be hesitant to use it for necessarily student placement or evaluation or things like that. I think depending on how we use AI in the classroom or how we use it for educational purposes, I think we'll need to look at these operational issues for how the district uses AI, but then we will need to look at how AI is used in an educational environment. If generative AI produces incorrect information for a student, what's the result? What do we do? If there's a graded project or test preparation and you get hallucinations, if you get things that incorrectly advise a student, what is the repercussion? I'm sure we will hear from angry students and angry parents, but can we just say, buyer beware, you use this tool, we can't guarantee the results, your grade is your grade. So there's a lot of different aspects, both from, what we might use to maximize efficiency in bus routing to how we address a student using it to assist with an essay. And that's really kind of where I want to be able to bring us around so we kind of know what policies we need, what sort of falls within our scope, and then there might be some other things that we're just not ready to adopt yet. So I just put that out to y'all.
So Mr. Chair, and I absolutely think that was a great question in response about what this means for the board. So one of the things that I wanted to be able to do is to bring information to the board so we can understand the depth and the breadth of AI. That I know a lot of the push that you're going to get from the community is you need to develop a policy to deal with ChatGPT and blah, blah, blah. That's not necessarily what you as a board need to be able to do. It is about knowing and understanding all the things that are associated with it, data governance, analysis versus recommendations. Those are the things that the board has to understand because this technology is so new. It is developing fast. And I want to make sure that the board is not in a position where they begin to develop policies that try to restrict or govern specific pieces of technology when that's just a small part of what the AI is. And so that's really what this is about is giving that information and knowledge so that as you begin to develop policies, then you can have that information. And if there's a need to develop a specific policy that deals with a specific thing, then you have the ability to do that. And so, great point that you've made. That's kind of where I want this to be able to go.
We do have time left for questions. Do we have questions from board members? Ms. Rice and Vice Chair Swanson.
I kind of did, but not completely sure. So just a confirmation, you were throwing out certain examples. Would we use this particular AI development, say for instance, I looked at it as AI to offer support to help staff be more efficient in areas where we can't give our complete attention to, meaning, I'm going to raise the question because I don't know how we feel about it. We are supposed to have a call line for families with disabilities to share information about an IEP or what it looks like, so they can answer generalized questions prior to attending their IEP. However, that call line is not always staffed, so I don't know if it looked like AI putting the laws in place, which means they would know it has to be specific, according to laws, not specific to the child, but specific to the generalization of an IEP meeting and what you can possibly expect, that type of thing. So I don't know, is that what the conversation, is that what we're looking at with what AI can do? Just not that specifically, but around being more efficient to help staff?
And so, my response, because I want to make sure I understand the question correctly, but in this instance, you would be talking about AI being able to give you some data about an IEP, and not that it would actually make a decision.
Right.
But there may be a lot of data associated with the decision-making that IEP team needs to make. And so AI is a way that you can collect that data and put it in a way that a team can analyze it. So I'll go a bit beyond that. One of the things that we always talk about, and Shasha and I had this conversation about, having a data dashboard. And so that means that we have the ability to go to these different places and find data. Now, AI, we may be able to, instead of having a data dashboard, to ask it specific questions and develop specific data about students so that a teacher can go back and analyze that and not have to pull from this, pull from that. It kind of creates the work, the data for you so you can analyze it. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about. If in an IEP situation, it still would be the responsibility of the team to analyze and make decisions, even though it may collect it for you and save you time in doing so.
Okay, I see it. So a parent could actually share their concern and what it is in that data collected, and it could output the information for the staff to look at it from the parent's voice of what it is, and then how they can craft the IEP. Okay, so it's just machine taking information and then sharing it to human, and human making decision.
So I don't want to give you a definitive answer on that, because I would see a lot of potential hazard with that. If it advised a parent incorrectly, if it advised a parent something that was either outside of the law, or it missed a deadline, or otherwise did something that could affect a parent's rights, I wouldn't entrust that to a machine.
So no, it's not, no, AI, this scenario, it's not going to give parent anything. It's for the parent to share, to collect the data of how they feel about their child's situation. They take that AI takes the data that parent is sharing and outputs it in a document for staff, so that staff can make a better informed decision about the stuff. So it's machine input and output, but the human decision, the human is going to make the
I
decision.
think that part, the human decision is right.
Yes.
I just would have questions about the first part of that for this application.
So I get it now. So in other words, this could be an example, and this would be what I would call an individual user type situation, meaning that we may have a particular technology that we can provide that says this is a tool that you can use to summarize your thoughts. And so again, that wouldn't be what we would do, try and govern a specific tool. But there is something like that could possibly be available for a parent. And sometimes it might be something that we provide, or a parent can do it on their own and summarize and bring it to us. And we don't know that they it's about.
IEP takes such a long time, but if they get some preliminary stuff could be out and give it to staff, and they have it in advance, it can help it move a little bit more effectively.
Vice Chair Swanson.
Well, my question was, I have a question, I also have a comment about the point that was raised. I think as we start developing AI, I have concerns with AI being utilized to help develop IEPs, because I think it's important to understand that the I in IEP is individualized for that student, and AI, as you indicated, doesn't always get things right. So I don't think that would be an example that we should utilize, given the fact that we're sued or folks file those complaints. So I don't think, I would caution staff about using that. But the question I have, though, is, as we're developing these policies, what lessons have other districts utilized or learned from this? what are some guidance that we should be considering as we're developing a plan or policy, knowing that AI is going to always, things are developing, but what are some of the meat or meat and potatoes that we should add to the policy that you all have learned?
That's going to be, so there's a lot of context there to that particular question. I just want to acknowledge that right up front. And the biggest takeaway of that is are we addressing in a policy that which is specific to AI and only impacts how we deploy and utilize AI in the district? Do we really need a separate policy for that? Or are we looking at policy that can be handled in things that already exist, in policies that may just need to be tweaked? That's what most districts are wrestling with at this point, is like building out a whole subset of AI-specific policies and realizing that they've duplicated things that are already in the employee handbook, or that it might already be in the code of conduct. So nuancing that into, this is how we're going to approach generative AI, policy about if we're going to put something out that's publicly that was AI generated, acknowledging that it was generated by AI, starting there with those simple things, starting there that when we have a solution that is on board, that is a chatbot, for example, that knowing that you're interacting with AI, those are where most people are still wrestling, because this is the worst AI we're ever going to see. And it's already doing things that we can't even begin to wrap our heads around in terms of some of the videos, some of the things that are being created. So there's a whole other side of that from productivity to disciplinarian. And what do we already have? What can we not recreate just because this says AI is attached to it?
I would say that you should definitely look to what other districts have done thus far as examples. And I think a great resource to look to is the Council of Great City Schools. I know that you guys are building a relationship with and already have relationships with. They're always willing to share the other organizations as to what they've done. And I think that it would be really helpful to draw upon what has been done out there so that you can see what is the best fit. I don't think that you need to start from scratch. There's already so much that that has been already developed by districts. So I think you should potentially take a look at some examples to really help inform this board as to what the right fit is for you. I would say that what you heard today about data and the previous session around AI in general is really to help inform you of the possibilities. What is AI? What is sort of the underlying AI for those that may not have experienced anything other than those chat bots that are out there? What kind of goes into AI, and what are those factors that you must consider when you're developing any kind of policy? Those bias, hallucination, security and privacy, and data. Just having that understanding, you heard it a lot. As far as how important and critical data is in order to get anything of value out of any AI solutions going forward. So with the board, you have a lot in front of you to develop these policies going forward. And I would just hope that some of this is to help, would help inform you as to what you need to do going forward, think about going forward. And I know we're probably far over time. I would just say that, do you have one more?
I said we did have one last question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes.
Pam. Thank you very much for all of this. I hope that we can go back to slide 20 and 21 and actually elaborate a little bit more. My question isn't really more focused on that. It's just that has some of the topics around what my questions are. And I totally understand, but...
We don't have slide numbers on it.
Oh, okay. It's what is responsibility of AI? So my question, I think, either more for us and for this whole presentation is really more understanding, like, what exactly is our goal? Are we trying to do, is this really more like a tool for helping our teachers? Are we trying to incorporate it into our students' learning? Or both? I mean, I understand everything that you said about AI and the presentations about how it could work for us, but I'm just wondering, like, is this actually really going to help our teachers if we're going to have them manually putting things in, like for the IAP? I agree with Mr. Swanson that there is a reason why it's called individual plan. And only a person can do that, because they're sitting in front of the child. They see how reactive they are. They see what's happening and what they're getting and what they're not and what they need. So I'm wondering with that, along with, so what cost are we going to spend in order to do this? Like, what would be our goal to actually go and concentrate onto this type of thing? Because you did mention things like bias. How do you control that? And if it's a human that's putting it in and you're dishing this out as, well, the AI says, and now somebody's actually counting on that information, who's putting it in there, right? So it is bias based on the person who put it in there. And I'm also concerned about lazy learning. I don't know how else to put that, but it's like, learning how to use the calculator before you learn how to do the math. The calculator is to advance your math skills with much bigger numbers, but you should really learn how to do it all with a pen and paper and figure it out yourself first. And then it helps you get on to bigger and better things. And I'm just worried, I see students, I've raised teenagers myself, if they can pick up that phone, now people are even talking to their phone.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even entering the information, they're not even working their thumbs out. So I am concerned about that and how that will affect our children. New and Chinese are not always better.
No, they're not always, but there is a reality that it is out there. It's on all of our students' phones. It's on most of our parents' phones. And it's not going to go away. So how, as a school district, are we going to take the information that we're able to gather around us and move forward with the reality that AI exists and that our students are going to be coming in, knowing it, and utilizing it in some way, shape, or form? How are we going to rise to that moment?
And I would just add, these are all things that you need to be aware of, that these are very real. And I will say that things are getting better and better every day. These foundation models are vastly improving. You saw the speed at which the users of ChatGPT reached 100 million, and then so you can see the speed at which this technology is progressing. And so the foundation models are getting better and better. And when you are looking at evaluating which foundation model is best for you, there are even educational models that are being developed that are specific to education. It's getting smarter and smarter. So I wouldn't say that, you should trust everything that comes in. You absolutely should not. But I think these are things that you need to be aware of. But I don't think that in the reality of the future that we exist in, that we can say that we can't consider AI. The kids today, our kids today that are in our schools, are going to be the ones that are developing AI for the future. Like, AI isn't going to go away. And right now, they are consumers of AI, right? They are consuming these AI tools probably more than all of us are, right? They are the ones that are going to be the creators of AI in the future. So when we're considering how do we prepare our students, we need to prepare them to be able to be the creators of AI and the technology beyond that in the future, because they are our future. So I think that those are just things that we need to consider, as we're developing processes going forward.
All right. So we have reached the conclusion of our time. I did want to ask if board members have specific questions they want to follow up on. Mr. Padilla, may they contact our speakers? Should they contact you? What's the best way to proceed?
They can reach out to me. I'm happy to take their questions.
All right. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it. All right. So our next item on our agenda, an update on the District 8 vacancy. So what I'd like to do is, we've had a couple questions that have come up. I wanted to recognize Ms. Allen, who can tell us about where we are right now with our applications, questions, and then we have a couple questions for you all where we need to get some direction on, there's some applications that might be incomplete, whether you'd like to accept them, whether you would want more information, or what your general direction is. All right? So with that, as of today, October the 7th, 2025, Ms. Allen, can you provide us with an update?
Absolutely. As of today, we have had several people to apply. We've had 10 to reach out to the District 8 vacancy website. Out of those 10, we've 4 who just inquired, but in their inquiry, they wanted to know, giving their address, do they live in the district? When we look at that number, we have 2 of those who did not live in the district but said that they wanted to know, can they apply for the District 8 seat? So I told them, no, they don't. They live in a different district. We appreciate your interest. We had 1 out of those 10 to ask, what is in District 8? I gave back the towns and the cities that were in District 8. I've also had 1 to tell me that they were interested. They stated that they lived in Apex, they thought that they were eligible, and they asked where they could send their letters of recommendation, where they could send their application. Now to the ones who have applied in some type of way. I've had 1 applicant to apply, submitted all documentation, said they lived in District 8 when I received their address. They do not live in that district. I've had another 2. 2 of them have applied. They live in Apex, or in the Apex area. 1 has the utility bill in their wife's name, so they submitted a bank statement with their financial information redacted, and they still submitted the utility bill with the wife's name. They supplied that information on September the 28th. I've had another who lives in District 8 based on their address. They have supplied their voter registration card, their cover letter, their resume, an internet bill, as the town of Apex utilities bill is in their spouse's name. And the letters of recommendation are forthcoming. I've had another to apply in District 8, gave their address. It is indeed in District 8. They supplied their information on 10/7. They have their letter of interest, their resume, 4 letters of recommendation, a voter registration card, and a saved screenshot from the voter registration confirmation website. They supplied a current mortgage statement and homeowner's insurance statement. And they attached that in lieu of a utility bill. The last person that I'm going to tell you applied, had all information, submitted their information on 9/29/25, and they live in District 8, and all of their information has been verified. That's who has applied for your District 8 seat as of today.
Thank you. So a couple things I want to ask the board for direction, and then we have like a bigger issue just to kind of talk about around some confusion around the application process. First of all, we laid out guidance on the website for what we would accept in terms of evidence of domicile, right? And this is based on court cases and advice from our attorneys. What do you want, what does the board want to do regarding situations where someone didn't provide exactly what was asked for, but provided an alternative? So for example, where we've asked for a utility bill and they might have provided like a bank or a mortgage statement with the address that matches. Is that sufficient? If a utility bill is in a spouse's name but not in their name, is that sufficient? And before you answer, what we've done in the past where we've had some of these issues, we've had a list of other documents that we've accepted before. Again, in the past, for the District 2 vacancy, where some people had submitted incomplete information, we'd had people submit a property tax bill, an automotive registration, a government paycheck, invoice, or letter, or other alternatives. So really, what I'm looking at is just some direction from you in terms of, is a mortgage statement sufficient? Is a a utility statement in a spouse's name significant, or should we reach out and ask for additional verifying documentation? Vice Chair Swanson.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Allen, for always being detailed with all of this. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think something similar came up during the District 4 vacancy where we had to deal with this, and so I think we should be consistent. I don't think, at least for me, I don't think we should bend and not go in the way that we've done in the past. And so if a person's able to provide one of these pieces that's listed out here, in addition, I think that would suffice before the deadline. And if they have a utilities bill that's in their spouse's name, I mean, they may have time to, add their name to prove that they live there if they can't get to one of these things. That's just where I'm standing on this issue.
Okay, thank you. Other thoughts, Ms. Caulfield?
Everybody's going to have license with their name on it, right? It doesn't mean that it's current, but if they provide multiple documentation to show, like if the spouse, everything is in their spouse's name as far as the mortgage and utility bills, but the license matches and they are on some kind of documentation showing that that's their domicile, I mean, I think it's okay as long as, depending on the documentation. You may not be able to provide that information and some of it may be outdated, doesn't mean that they don't actually live there, but there are people who own multiple properties or are landlords and the address may be in DA, but they don't actually really reside there. That's the thing we need to decide.
We had a situation where rent was in a spouse's name, but utilities were covered by rent. So they didn't have a utility bill per se.
Right.
So what do you think, well, let me just ask, is there anybody kind of with a different opinion or a dissent on that? If we all sort of want to stay consistent with what we've done before and we're open to alternatives, then what I would ask is, then when someone has not submitted everything that was required, in the statement, would we give Ms. Allen permission to write back, let them know that the application is not complete, and then provide them the list of alternative documentation to provide for the board to consider? Does that sound like a fair?
As long as they can get it to Ms. Allen before the deadline.
Okay.
I think for me, if they miss that deadline, then I'm not, as an individual, or I wouldn't be willing to accept that interview just because I'm trying to be consistent through the process with them. So that's just where I stand.
Good point. What do we think? Mr. Raymond?
Just to chime in on the legal point, so the legal standard for domicile doesn't require any specific documentation necessarily. So in the student assignment context, for example, it's normal they would ask for a lease, but not everybody has a lease. Some people will live in a home that's owned by a family member. It's grandma's home, and the extended families live there for a generation. And so there's some flexibility might be a good idea, I think, because you could have people that are legitimately do have a domicile, do meet the legal requirements, are residents and domiciliaries of the district, but won't be able to provide any particular sort of documentation. So one option would be to have an acceptable list of alternatives, and also, if there is a unique case where someone can't come up with any of the documents but really asserts that I do live and have long lived in this district, they could provide documentation of their own for your review. I mean, you do need to make sure that people meet the eligibility requirements, but again, no specific documents legally required.
And again, the list of documents was generated by your law firm that specifically asked about what we could use.
Right, which is it's a good list. I'm just saying that in rare cases, because this comes up in student assignment.
Okay.
I work with all the time. In unusual cases, someone could say, I can't provide any of these, but they're able to persuade staff that they do live in the district anyway.
So then the second thing I would bring up to you is that this is the most confusion we've had with a vacancy that I can remember, in at least filling the last 3 vacancies that we've seen since I've been on the board. And I don't really understand it because we're being consistent with what we've done twice in District 4, once in District 2. But again, talking to the attorneys at Barrington Smith, they've suggested that perhaps on the application website, we should provide more information, either an address lookup or a GIS tool. They had some that they were able to provide. There's one that Ms. Allen uses that is available through WCPSS. Again, it wouldn't necessarily establish domicile because it's only as good as the address you put in, but it would let people look up to see if the address that they're submitting shows up within the boundaries of District 8. Is that something that you think we should add to the website?
That's a great idea. If somebody is registered to vote, doesn't it show up on there exactly what their district is? They'll see what school district they have.
Yeah.
So maybe we could provide that link.
And that was something, I think we actually did go back. That was something that the vice chair pointed out, that state Board of Elections lookup, that if people use that, it will show them their district. But then the graphic exercise was something that was suggested as well in case there was, unless that voter registration was out of date. And we even had this long debate about, well, do you need to have an updated voter registration for this? And then the question was eligibility to run for office versus eligibility to serve in office as an appointment. Technically, with what we're doing, you have a little more of a grace period that you could be appointed to serve and not have your registration updated yet, but to actually file for office and run for it, you would have to have an updated registration. So it's trying to balance all of these different legal requirements. The voter lookup is something that is on there now. The map is just something whether or not you think it would be helpful and whether we should add it.
Why not both?
Okay, we can do both. All right. So then the final question then comes to if, where we've had people in the past that we've needed more documentation from, our experience has said that sometimes it takes them a while to put that together. Sometimes people's, aren't always responsive necessarily as they should be to Ms. Allen's communications. Also, how many people might have been confused about whether they live in the district or not in the district. And so I wanted to bring up the idea of the deadline and whether, if we're going to make this maybe a more involved process, if we're going to add more material on the website, if we want to look at that deadline and revisit it. Vice Chair Swanson.
So yes, I do think, given the fact that folks are having difficulty determining that they live or reside in District 8, going through this additional step, I think we should extend the deadline at least to the 14th, which still gives folks an opportunity. It does not impact the interview, which is stated on the 25th that we voted on the last time. So I think just to be a little bit more transparent and to help folks understand where they reside, I would be inclined to support.
And I asked Ms. Allen just to print out the latest calendar so you can see in terms of other board meetings, other conflicts, or anything that we might have. Again, if I understand, Mr. Stein, you're not proposing to change the interview date.
Correct.
This is just the amount of time so that if there is a cutoff, we could still have some verification and give people time to respond to that verification.
And it just extends this roughly 2 weeks and 15 days. 15 days out.
And so, based on our previous board action, I think we would have to take board action to extend the deadline. But then all of the other things that we've talked about adding to the website, I think we can just take out of work session. We don't necessarily need a board vote on, as I didn't hear any dissension about the map, the voter lookup, and then also that we would reach out to vote to applicants if an application was incomplete, just to solicit more complete information. Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion on that? I don't want to over-talk it, but I do want to make sure that we all are in agreement or all feel good about it. Okay. All right. All right. So, all right. If that's the case, then we'll do that at the board table. That is an action item that we'll have. The next item I have briefly, the North Carolina School Board Association Annual Conference. So this is the time of year where you may have gotten information, you might have already spoken to Melissa about whether or not you would like to participate in the School Board Association's annual conference in Greensboro. One thing that we have to do now as members of the organization is we have to select formal voting members. This does not restrict how many of us can attend the conference, but we can have no more than 4 of our, at this point, 8 board members who could be selected as voting members. We're not going to decide this today, but we do have to decide this before the end of October. So at our next meeting, we will have a motion that will have a slate of board members. What I'd like to do is ask all of you, if you are interested, to please let us know in the next week, prior to next Friday, if you would like to be included on that slate. Now, I need to clarify a few things for you. Some of you have participated in this before. This year's delegate assembly will be a little bit different, okay? And I just have to pull up my notes here, I apologize. All right, so according to NCSBA this year, if you are a non-voting delegate, an alternate, and anybody, we can send any number of alternates. So everyone attending, if you're not a voting member, can be an alternate. Any number, all the alternates can attend the general session. They just can't vote on anything, and they can't speak on anything. So if you remember last year's meeting, we had a big conference hall where there was a legislative agenda and a lot of resolutions and things like that. At this meeting, there will be no legislative agenda. There will be no resolutions. The only thing on the agenda is new board terms for the association and election of the officers. So they are actually going to have this meeting during lunch. So everyone's invited to lunch, so everyone will be in the room. The only distinction about whether you are a delegate or a non-delegate is whether you get to vote for their slate of officers and their new board members. Okay? So are there any questions about that? Again, you don't have to declare today, but if you're interested, please let us know. If we have 4 people, we'll put those 4 up as a slate by consent. If we have more than 4, we'll have it as an action item, or we'll have to vote on, which 4 will be selected. Okay? And then anyone who's not selected, if you'd like to go as an alternate, you can go as an alternate. If you don't want to put your name up, but you want to be an alternate, just let us know and we can just add you as an alternate. Are there any questions about that? Okay. All right. So we don't have a lot of time left, but we did have a request to add something to the work session agenda. Ms. Rice, did you want to, I guess technically we have to add it to the agenda, so would you like to make a motion and then see if we get a second?
I make a motion to add community engagement discussion to our agenda for today.
Okay. Second. We have a second from Mr. Hershey, a motion from Ms. Rice. All in favor to adding this quick discussion item to the agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. I understand. We do have 7 minutes, and we will try to
Oh, we can do
expedite
it
it.
in less than 5.
Okay.
It's very quickly. As you all know...
Oh, wait, we have to take the vote first. All in favor?
We did.
Oh, we did.
We did.
Motion passes. Go right ahead, Ms. Rice. I apologize.
You voted no. Okay, no worries. If you all recall, community engagement started with Ms. Monica Johnson Hostler. And our long-term vision was that we really do community engagement in the community. And so as being the chair of the Community Engagement Committee, we have did multiple engagements here at the board table. And so now it's time to bring that into full fruition. And so what we're doing is moving our Community Engagement Committee meeting to the community as of our next committee meeting, which is October the 14th, which would be in Roseville. At the co-working community space in Roseville, at Rise Co-working. The meeting would be from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. This, of course, is about engagement, which give parents real opportunities to be a part of our school system versus most can't be here during the middle of the day when we're having meetings. And so it was for I brought this to our chair and to consent to make us aware and to confirm the date and the time of us being able to move it to the community as of next Tuesday.
Okay. And for transparency, I just saw this specifically today.
Yes,
right?
and we all just got it. We've been working on it for a while, but we had to confirm the space. It took a moment for us to find space that would accommodate us as a board. We would still continue with the same setup as presentation-wise, as we would have a committee, we would just do this now in community. And so we would need everyone around the table to lift up the voice, to share it, to get community participation. We'll have a new addition to our community engagement piece outside of the folks presenting to us as normal, that we'll also do a fireside chat in reference to some Q&A conversations. It'll be conversations, questions that have already been submitted, and that would be moderated by Dr. Robinson and Dr. Alfred Key with the Community Engagement Committee around the table.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rice. I know not everyone has had a chance to see like the memo that you had put together on this. I want to thank you for putting a lot of thought and a lot of work into this. If you remember in community engagement, we did talk about this was something that the board would like to do. We would like to move around we would like to move out into the community and host some of these meetings. Seeing this right now for something that we would do next week, there are a lot of questions about it. And what I want to do is, while still respecting and honoring the idea, make sure that logistically we can do this, or whether we would need to look at like a future meeting. And so I don't know, would you be prepared to answer some of those questions?
We are.
now?
We've already taken care of all the logistics and worked with the staff and the team in reference to making sure that those pieces are already put together before we actually brought it to you all. That was part of why the vetting process took so long. Ms. Alfred Keefe and them had to make sure that it had the space, the accommodations, and the AV systems and things of that nature. And she is here to answer any quick questions that we may have, if you prefer, Chair, to put it even on the action of our committee, of our agenda tonight, if it so moved you. Because we would like to get it announced so community could actually participate for next week.
Okay, so real quick, I know we have some questions.
Yes.
We are almost at 5:30.
Yes.
I think we do need some discussion, have some questions answered, just to give you the confirmation that you're looking for. Do we want to stay in here for that discussion? We can't, it's not a closed session item, so we can't do it after the meeting, or is it something we would want to decide in open session, adding to the open session agenda? What's your preference?
I would like for it to be an open session if we could.
Okay.
If you could just allot us 5 minutes or so with it, just because if the board so chooses to collectively have their questions answered, it also gives publication, it gives us a moment for it to be publicized as well at the same time.
Okay. So let me ask this. Would staff be prepared to ask questions if it's added to open session?
Yes.
Ms. Rice, would you be able to take the information that you shared with me earlier and provide that to all the board members?
Yes,
Give them a
sir.
chance to look at it?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Vice Chair Swanson.
We can make a copy, and we can make sure everybody has a copy.
Okay. Vice Chair Swanson.
So I appreciate the work that's went into this. I have numerous questions and concerns, and just given that this is a week out, it's concerning. How do you move a committee meeting, which I know has been done, to other places without it being, televised or whatnot? So just, concerned about that, and, wishing that we all would have received this a little bit earlier, but I won't be able to make it at that time frame, so I won't be able to, but, I appreciate the effort that's going into there, but I have some questions that need to be raised before I can support shifting that.
Thank you. And I have some questions as well, just based on like other recommendations and information that staff had shared with us previously, to make sure that everything can go. But at the same time, I also don't want to squash the energy around this. So does anyone object to bringing it to open session? If not, we'll just have a motion to amend the agenda. Okay, great. And then that way, if you can provide that information, board members, I know we're going to be in the middle of a meeting. I don't want to tell you to multitask or take your attention away from anything else, but do try to look at it where you do have an opportunity, try to review the information. We'll just add it to the end of the agenda.
Okay.
Is that appropriate? Okay, Vice Chair Swanson.
So will the materials or the handout that Ms. Rice has, will that be able to go into assembly quickly, or?
That I don't know.
I have copies on my computer. I can just forward it to Ms.
I'm trying to make sure
I can have everybody, and I can give everybody a copy. All the board members a copy.
But I don't think that was Mr. Swanson's question.
I'm just trying to figure out how the public will be able to see it, discuss it, and folks who may want to discuss it on public comment, they wouldn't have had the opportunity to speak on it this. So those are some of the concerns that I have. Is,
Yeah, but we normally, I'm sorry, Chair.
But if, let me just ask, is that something you can make happen? Because if you can, then it's,
What I can make happen is I can go upstairs, make sure everybody has a copy. I can make sure I can give Ms. Allen a copy as well. As far as how it goes in assembly and things of that nature, I have to defer to Ms. Allen.
Well, see, Ms. Allen's going to be busy during the meeting.
Correct.
In her role and won't be able to put that as assembly.
You need to give me a crisis and quickly. And your backup need to be here when you say it.
All right.
Okay.
Let's
All right. If we can delay the start of the meeting by a few minutes to try to get that up and in the system, okay? All right. All right, so
We're adding it to the agenda?
we'll have a motion to add it to the agenda, and then we'll discuss it at the end of that regular agenda, like before we would do board comment, but after we would finish our action item. Okay? All right, with that, we'll call the work session adjourned.